Ukraine declares Bakhmut city standing. Russian ammunition depots hit by HIMARS exploded for hours. During a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center on Thursday morning, April 20, Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar said Bakhmut had become one of the most expensive operations against Russians when they suffered the greatest loss of equipment and manpower there. Loud explosions were heard in the area of the Russian-occupied city of Bakhmut. Loud explosions accompanied by secondary explosions that lasted for several hours indicated that Russian artillery and missile depots had been hit by Ukrainian artillery fire. Commenting on this development, Deputy Minister Hanna Maliar said, "For them, first of all, this is probably one of the most expensive operations because a large amount of equipment and weapons have been wasted on it, and by the way, they have just been destroyed by the armed forces of Ukraine. Largely cancelled. Explosions that lasted for several hours took place. They suffered great losses there. And these losses are many times higher than our losses. This is war and we have to be realistic. Unfortunately, this is the price we have to pay for our independence." According to her, our command planning there allows to ensure that Ukraine's losses are minimal considering what they might encounter in such fierce battles. Deputy Minister Hanna Maliar emphasized that the enemy had made all efforts to gain control of the city. They dumped a load of weapons and equipment there. That is very important to them. It seems that this is not even only from a military point of view, but also from a political point of view as they have thrown all their propaganda at Bakhmut. And, accordingly, in order to restrain them, we must also focus a great amount of effort on that. Indeed, since they cannot fight us in street battles because they will lose, they uses his proven Syrian tactics and is wiping neighborhoods off the face of the earth. In such a situation, it is difficult to hold positions. In fact, it is impossible to keep them in such a situation. Indeed, there have been some meager advances by the enemy in certain areas, said Maliar. Deputy Minister Hanna Maliar said Russia carried out 33 airstrikes in the Donetsk region in the past day, hitting 14 settlements and damaging 58 civilian structures. Apart from Bakhmut, the fighting is fiercest along the Donetsk front in Lyman, Avdiivka and Mariinka. In the Lyman area, northeast of Bakhmut, the enemy conducted unsuccessful attacks near the southern suburbs of Kreminna. She stressed that the Russians have made no progress in the Avdiivka region, where President Volodymyr Zelensky visited on Tuesday. In the Mariinka area, our defenses repelled many enemy attacks in the Mariinka and Pobieda areas. Further south in the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, Russia shelled more than 30 settlements. But unlike in Donetsk, Russian forces in these areas are in defensive mode. Deputy Minister Hanna Maliar also confirmed that Russian invaders continue to establish military hospitals behind the front lines, most recently in the village of Kabichivka, in the Luhansk region. 2. Air raid warnings are reported across Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say the flash near Kyiv may have been caused by a falling U.S. satellite in air. Strike alert sounded Wednesday night over several regions of Ukraine, Ukrainian Air Force spokesman, Colonel Yuri Inat, said as above. He said then an air target was detected in the sky, and that air defense forces were ready. A series of flashes and a clear explosion in the air far from the capital can be seen in the video on social media. Airstrikes have been activated for Kyiv city and region, Sumy, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Zaporizhia and Donetsk regions. Colonel Yuri Inat said the Iranian-made Shahid drone was shot down over the city of Dnipro. However, he suggested that the bright flashes of light near the Ukrainian capital on Wednesday night could have been caused by a NASA space satellite crashing to Earth, not by Russian forces. Around 2200 hours on April 19, the bright light of an aerial object was observed in the sky over Kyiv. According to preliminary information, this phenomenon is the result of a NASA space satellite falling to Earth, he said. In order to avoid casualties from falling debris, an aerial warning has been issued. The air defense system isn't working. CNN is reaching out to NASA for comment. The agency previously reported the Reuven Ramadi high-energy solar spectroscopic imager spacecraft will crash to Earth late Wednesday, U.S. Eastern Time. The ship was launched in 2002 and decommissioned in 2018. Ukraine was on high alert after Putin was seen summoning Vyacheslav Gladkov, governor of the Belgorod region, to Moscow on Monday, April 17 after the governor reported that Ukrainian troops had launched rockets against Ukraine. The collapse of power infrastructure caused power outages across a large swath of Russia. Normally, after such an event Russia would attack brutally in retaliation. Earlier, Vyacheslav Gladkov said in a statement that the town of Krasnoy, in the Shebekinsky municipality of the Belgorod region, was shelled by the Ukrainian armed forces, referring to Ukrainian artillery that fired rockets into Russian territory. However, the local media gave a different version. They say 2 drones dropped improvised explosive devices on local thermal power plants, causing power outages in a large area. During a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center Tuesday morning, April 18, representative of Ukraine's Defense Intelligence, Andriy Yusov, said, "We will not confirm or deny Ukraine's involvement. I think the Russians should get used to the fact that while they wage a senseless war of aggression, there is no safe place on their territory. War has come to the home of every Russian fascist and every subject of the Russian regime." 3. Putin's allies suggest Russia cannot win without total mobilization. Newsweek had an article titled "Putin Ally Suggests Russia Can't Win Without General Mobilization," which means 1. Putin's ally suggests Russia cannot win without total mobilization. A member of the Russian State Duma Security Committee has suggested that his country cannot defeat Ukraine in the ongoing war unless Russian President Vladimir Putin declares general mobilization. Must be encouraged. "We have to fight with the whole world, as it is often said, and everyone must feel part of the country," said Mikhail Shirmit, a lawmaker in Russia's lower house of parliament and a member of the Water Party. The ruling United Russia said the above according to the independent news agency The Moscow Times. "Collective mobilization is now possible," Shirmit said. Newsweek has reached out to the Russian Foreign Ministry by email for comment. Putin has so far refused to declare full mobilization, which would put the country in a position of war. However, he announced partial mobilization in September 2022, saying that Russia would attack 300,000 reservists and veterans with certain military expertise and relevant experience. The Russian leader announced in October that the recruitment was complete, but since then, military observers have assessed that the Russian troops fighting in Ukraine are being augmented by the recruitments. Secret, because Putin feared the backlash that a general mobilization might cause. Shirmit made a similar comment about the mobilization in September 2022, a week before Putin announced the partial mobilization. He said in an interview with URA.ru, as reported by the News 24 all-daily publication, "If we don't fully mobilize, switch to the military base, including the economy, we won't achieve it." Desired results. Although the Kremlin has denied rumors that Putin might announce another wave of mobilization in the ongoing conflict, in April the British Ministry of Defence assessed that Russian media reports suggest that authorities are preparing to begin a major recruitment campaign, with the aim of recruiting an additional 400,000 troops. The UK's Department of Defence Intelligence said in an assessment of the conflict in Ukraine that Russia is presenting its latest recruitment campaign as an incentive for volunteer, professional staff, not must be a new forced mobilization. Russia may find it difficult to attract 400,000 real volunteers, the British Ministry of Defence said. Shirmit's latest call for general mobilization comes ahead of an expected counterattack from Ukraine on Crimea, a peninsula in the Black Sea that was illegally annexed by Putin in 2014. 4. Defense Minister Wang Kwok-on says some information in leaked classified documents is false or inaccurate. Top UK defense official casts doubt on the authenticity and impact of US intelligence documents leaked recently, some of which contained information about the war in Ukraine. He went further than US officials in casting doubt on the content of hundreds of classified intelligence sites that had been posted online. UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace declined to comment on specific topics in the documents. Speaking to journalists in Washington, D.C., he acknowledged that some of the information could be a bit damaging, it could be a little difficult for some countries, but expressed confidence that the leak will not have a significant effect. "If you're Ukrainian and you're sitting there fighting a war, you're used to disinformation, you're used to leaks, you're used to hacking attempts, you're used to attempts espionage, you're used to assassination plots," he said. Do I think it will strengthen Russia? Or not. Will it weaken Ukraine? Or not. Do I think it damages our relationship with the United States? Absolutely not. While members of the U.S. government, from President Joe Biden to his top national security officials, have repeatedly said they are taking the leak seriously, working with allies to get things right and refer to the Justice Department's ongoing investigation, Wallace was more blunt. He said he wouldn't be the only one who looked at those reports and found that they weren't entirely accurate. The fact is, after reading what I've seen in open source, I immediately see that some of those claims are untrue, Wallace said Tuesday. I saw in that leak some inaccuracies, significant inaccuracies or manipulation of the information, he said. My advice is not to take what it says lightly. Aside from a verifiable document that apparently altered the Russian and Ukrainian casualty numbers, American officials largely expressed no doubt about the authenticity of the leaked documents, most of which had a similar standard. Top secret or secret. Wallace is in the United States this week for meetings at the Pentagon and on Capitol Hill. Last week, Jack Teixeira, a 21-year-old private first class with the Massachusetts Air National Guard, was charged under the Espionage Act with unlawful storage and transmission of national defense information and unauthorized removal. Classified information and defense documents. 5. The Russian parliament votes in favor of a law applying life sentences to treason. According to state news agency TASS, Russia's parliament, the State Duma, voted in favor of a bill that would allow for life imprisonment for high treason. Currently, the maximum sentence for treason in Russia is 20 years in prison. Only Russian citizens or dual nationals can be charged with treason. Under the bill, under the treason clause, Russian citizens, including those with dual citizenship, could be convicted for sharing state secrets with a foreign country, organization or its representative, spy, and provide financial, logistical, consulting or other assistance in operations against the security of the Russian Federation. The bill was proposed on April 7, before Kremlin critic Vladimir Kara-Murza, a Russian-British citizen, was sentenced to 25 years in prison after a Moscow court accused him of treason, discrediting the military and participating in the activities of an NGO or unwanted organization. Kara-Murza has publicly condemned Russia's war with Ukraine. The bill still needs to be approved by the upper house, the Federation Council, and the Russian parliament before being signed into law by Putin. The bill's amendments also strengthen penalties for terrorism offenses. For example, under the terrorist attack provision, the maximum sentence would be increased from 15 to 20 years. 6. The Pentagon believes that Russia is going backward in terms of war equipment and is forced to deploy World War II tanks. Pentagon spokesman Brigadier General Pat Ryder said Russia is going backward in providing the equipment they are using in Ukraine. Moscow has also been seen deploying tanks that were built shortly after World War II as the country struggled to replenish its lost armored vehicles. He said the U.S. has not seen a huge increase in the production of equipment in Russia. The equipment they are using is old-generation war weapons, adding that Moscow increasingly relies on older models of tanks during the war. They started with the T-80 and T-90 tanks, then went down to the T-72, and indeed, we saw the first T-55s being refurbished to be able to roll and put into service. Fight. There's also a similar picture of firecrackers, officials said. The T-90 was first introduced in 1992, the T-80 in 1976, while the T-72 entered service with the Soviets in 1972 and the T-55 after World War II in 1948. They are going backwards in terms of equipment, he added. Brigadier General Pat Ryder said Russia was still struggling in terms of manpower, explaining that despite being able to assemble a large number of personnel, Moscow still did not adequately train them. We have seen 2 relatively small training sessions in Belarus, but of the 150,000 people they claim to have mobilized, we can see that only about 15,000 have participated in any form of university-level training. Team. Thus, we see that the Russian forces at the moment have been greatly degraded compared to the forces that were originally brought into Ukraine. 7. Russians say he is a veteran. Wagner seems to retract his claim that he massacred civilians. A Russian man says he killed children and other civilians while serving Wagner, a private military company in Ukraine, appears to have withdrawn his testimony, suggesting that he was threatened to contradict previous statements. Azimuth Uldarov, a former prisoner, retracted his earlier statements in an internet interview with Russian news agency RAFAN. It's not clear if there was any pressure on them to refute the statements in the previous interview. He and another former prisoner, Alexei Savichev, previously gave long and rambling interviews with reporter Osechkin of the Russian human rights group Gulegu.net, saying they were among tens of thousands of Wagner fighters recruited. Graves from Russian prisons to fight in Ukraine. Speaking to Gulagu founder Vladimir Oshkin, Uldarov said he shot and killed a young girl, calling it a decision from higher-ups. "I wasn't allowed to let anyone out alive, because the orders given to me were to kill anyone in the way," he said, estimating that the girl was about 5 or 6 years old. In an interview with RIA Fan, an organization affiliated with Wagner Group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, Oldarov said that he was drunk when he gave an earlier interview with Gulagu.net and alleged that Osechkin had blackmailed him about his time in prison. RIA Fan asked, "Did they make you say what you said in the video?" Oldarov replied, "Not only is it true, but it is too true. I was forced to speak out because I had no other choice." Then Oldarov said, "I said whatever I was told by Osechkin to say." "Prigozhin is a great guy," he added, giving him a thumbs up. "He saved our lives." But Gulagu's Osechkin, who is based in France, told CNN he upheld his interview with the two men, citing Oldarov's retraction as evidence that dissenting voices had how quickly extinguished in Russia. Osechkin also claimed that both interviewees, Oldarov and Savichev, were threatened with death if they did not withdraw their testimony to him. Savichev told Gulagu that his unit was ordered to kill any man aged 15 or over. 8. U.S. warns Russia not to touch U.S. nuclear technology at Ukraine nuclear plant. The United States has sensitive nuclear technology at a nuclear power plant inside Ukraine and is warning Russia not to touch it, according to a letter the U.S. Department of Energy sent to state nuclear energy company Rosatom of Russia. In a letter reviewed by CNN and dated March 17, 2023, the director of the Department of Energy's Office of Nonproliferation Policy, Andrea Ferkel, told Rosatom's Director General that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Enerhodar, Ukraine, originating in the United States with nuclear technical data exported by the United States government. Goods, software, and technology subject to U.S. export controls when they can be used in a way that undermines U.S. national security interests. The letter from the Energy Ministry comes as Russian forces continue to control the plant, which is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe and is located in part of the Zaporizhzhia region that Russia invaded after the invasion. Ukraine in February last year. The plant is regularly disconnected from Ukraine's power grid due to intense Russian shelling in the area, sparking fears across Europe of a nuclear accident. While the plant is still operated by Ukrainian employees, Rosatom manages the plant. The Department of Energy warned Rosatom in the letter that it is illegal for any Russian citizen or organization to deal with U.S. technology. CNN has reached out to Rosatom for comment. Under U.S. law, it is illegal to engage unauthorized persons, including but not limited to Russian citizens and Russian organizations, the letter reads, such as Rosatom and its partners. Its subsidiaries knowingly access, possess, control, export, store, seize, review, re-export, transport, transfer, copy, manipulate technology or technical data technique or direct or authorize others to do the same, without the authorization of the United States Secretary of Energy. It is unclear whether Rosatom has responded to the letter. The Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration told CNN in a statement that the letter was authentic. The letters were first reported by the Russian news agency RBC. The Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration can confirm that the letter is legitimate, said Shaila Hassan, Deputy Director of Public Relations for the National Nuclear Security Administration. She added, "The Secretary of Energy has a statutory responsibility to authorize the transfer of unclassified civilian nuclear technology and to support foreign atomic energy activities. The ministry does not comment on regulatory activities." 9. Wikipedia may be blocked in Russia for telling the truth. Russia's minister in charge of digital affairs says the country doesn't plan to block Wikipedia as a court in Moscow issues a fine for this online encyclopedia for not removing content that Russia considers illegal. "We have not blocked Wikipedia, there are currently no such plans," Interfax news agency quoted the Minister of Digital Affairs, Maksut Shadiv, as saying at a data forum in Moscow. Reuters reported that on Tuesday, Moscow's Tagansky District Court fined Wikipedia owner Wikimedia Foundation 800,000 rubles or $9,800 for what Russian news agencies say failed to remove information deemed promotional. Jumping, in which a person clings to the side of a train or sits on top of a carriage. The Wikimedia Foundation was previously fined for not removing what a Russian court deemed disinformation about the war in Ukraine. 10. U.S. Department of Justice indicts 7 people working for Russia. Reuters reports that the U.S. Justice Department has announced new charges against 4 Americans in Florida and 3 Russians for allegedly working on behalf of the Russian government to conduct a malicious influence campaign abroad for many years in the United States. The indictment, coming from a federal grand jury in Tampa, adds charges against Moscow resident Alexander Viktorovich Ionov and officers of Russia's Federal Security Service, or FSB, as Alexei Borisovich Sukhatilov and Yegor Sergeyevich Popov. Additionally, a separate, undisclosed case in Washington accuses Russian citizen Natalia Berlinova of conspiring with an FSB officer to act as an illegal Russian agent in the United States. 11. Poland makes a proposal for a new set of sanctions against Russia. Poland this month launched a proposal for a new set of sanctions against Russia for waging war against Ukraine, according to a document seen by Reuters, including a ban on Russian oil imports through pipelines and import diamonds. The text of the proposal, which a diplomatic source said has been sent to the European Union's Executive Committee for Europe, marks the beginning of long and complicated negotiations between the bloc's 27 countries. All EU members must agree to impose new sanctions. The bloc has taken 10 punitive steps against Russia since Vladimir Putin's all-out invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Warsaw's proposal would stop Russian oil imports through the northern branch of the Druzhba pipeline to Germany. It would end Russia's imports of diamonds and natural gas, including liquefied petroleum gas commonly known as LNG, and limit nuclear energy cooperation. Germany and Lithuania also support nuclear energy sanctions. Hungary and France, which trade with Russia, have shown reluctance to take these measures. Hungary, last week said it had agreed to amend its contract with Russia's Rosatom to expand the pact's nuclear plant. Hungary has so far staunchly opposed any sanctions against Russia's nuclear energy. Belgium, home to the world's largest Antwerp diamond trading hub, has been successful in lobbying against Russia's diamond import ban so far. 12. Swedish vodka brand Absolut Vodka will once again stop exporting to Russia. Vodka is considered a traditional Russian culture. However, on the contrary, the famous vodka in Russia is not vodka produced in Russia but the Swedish vodka brand Absolut Vodka. In a statement on Tuesday, April 18, company spokesman Absolut Vodka said vodka exports were suspended at the start of the war but Pernod Ricard had resumed exports of some of its brands, including Absolut, went to Russia late last year. The decision to do so provoked a backlash in Sweden, where Absolut is made. The intelligence service of the UK Ministry of Defence says that Russian soldiers are often drunk and in such drunkenness they murder innocent civilians. Therefore, the company's decision to resume exports has been strongly criticised in Sweden. Absolut's chief executive officer, Stephanie Deroux, said in a statement on Tuesday that the reaction in recent days clearly reflects the role Absolut plays in its expanding community in Sweden. Absolut company has decided to stop exporting its brand to Russia. She went on to say that the company has an obligation to care for our employees and partners. We cannot allow them to be heavily criticized in any way. Vladlen Tatarsky, a well-known pro-Russian war blogger and journalist, has just been killed in an assassination attempt in the city of St. Petersburg on April 2, frequently criticized alcoholism in the Russian military, which he said had reduced combat effectiveness. On January 3, he reported on an incident involving Major Razum Tajeev, commander of the 2nd Armored Battalion of the Russian 2nd Motorized Rifle Division. Major Razum Tajeev, captured early in the war and spent 4 months as a prisoner of Ukraine before being released, and returned to his division. He allegedly told the Ukrainian army a lot, so when he returned, he was investigated and temporarily put on the sidelines, no longer having any authority over the officers and soldiers. Now he's an alcoholic and an arsonist. Twice he blew down battalion headquarters, wrote Vladlen Tatarsky.
Everyone can make mistakes, but when people realize that they have made a mistake, they give up their decision. And what happens if they don't admit they made a mistake? They make new mistakes to make up for each mistake and end up in a corner. Russian President Vladimir Putin is also cornered because he keeps making mistakes. The latest news coming out of Russia reveals that Putin is in deep chaos. Every day there are different crises in the Russian army. Problems within the army have now escalated. Especially the moves made by the Wagner Group executives have raised tensions in the Russian army. This situation is also reflected on the Russian people. The last mistake made by the Wagner Group has caused tensions in Russia to rise too much. Putin does not have enough means to end the tension. There could be chaos in Russia at any moment. And what did Wagner Group do? What is the reason for the tension in Russia? How will this tension affect the course of the war? As Anka Daily News team, we have investigated all these questions for you. It is very important to support independent journalism in order to continue this kind of news. For this, you can use the super thanks button below the video. Let's start if you are ready. The Wagner Group has been one of the most damaging to Putin in recent years. In fact, Wagner was expected to support Putin a lot. But the Wagner Group made many moves that put Putin in a difficult situation. As you know, Russian President Vladimir Putin was a great supporter of the establishment of the Wagner Group. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner Group, was one of Putin's most trusted people. Prigozhin was referred to as Putin's chief. But after the Wagner Group gained power, the situation changed. Now Prigozhin is one of Putin's enemies. One of the most important reasons for the growing tension between Prigozhin and Putin is the illegal activities of the Wagner Group. The soldiers of the Wagner Group commit many war crimes. The soldiers of the Wagner Group do not follow any rules and fight brutally. Their atrocities are often talked about all over the world, especially their execution methods are on the world's agenda. It is not known exactly how many people the Wagner Group has executed so far. However, videos of some of these executions are being shared. In the videos, it is seen that the Wagner Group uses hammers to execute people. This brutal method is one of the most important features of the Wagner Group. On the other hand, the Wagner Group is also known for its illegal business activities. Wagner is alleged to have made illegal profits, especially by trading arms and drugs. Many countries condemn the Wagner Group for these allegations. However, as a result of the Wagner Group's lack of transparency on this issue, many countries reacted to Russia. This has also affected Russia's economy, because many countries have imposed economic sanctions against Russia. As a result, the crisis between the Kremlin and the Wagner Group is growing. Nevertheless, the cooperation between Wagner and the Kremlin continued. Because the Russian army suffered a heavy defeat in Ukraine, Putin knows that he has to use the Wagner Group to win this war. That's why the Kremlin government gives the Wagner Group many special rights. The most interesting of these rights is related to prisons. The Wagner Group is trying to take prisoners from prisons to the battlefield. Talking to the prisoners, the Wagner leaders make them an offer. According to this offer, if the prisoners join the Wagner Group, they will be free when the war is over. Prisoners who would have to live in prison for many years accept this offer and join the Wagner Group. But most of these prisoners die on the battlefield, because Wagner's leaders assign these prisoners to the most dangerous conflicts. After this was revealed, the number of prisoners who agreed to join the Wagner Group began to decline. No one accepts the offers of the Wagner directors anymore. This made the Wagner managers very angry, because the Wagner Group suffered a heavy defeat on the battlefield. After many Wagner soldiers die, new soldiers are asked to join the group. But because no new soldiers are joining, the number of soldiers in the Wagner Group is rapidly decreasing. The Wagner faction is in a deep decline. In a report published at the beginning of March, the US security authorities published data on the deaths of soldiers in the Wagner Group. According to this data, more than 9,000 Wagner soldiers were killed in combat in just 1 month. According to experts, this number is increasing every day. The Wagner Group is suffering a historic defeat. To solve this problem, the Wagner Group decided to increase its activities in prisons. A large number of managers were assigned for this. Wagner managers went to Russian prisons and started meeting with prisoners. But something strange happened during these meetings. 500 Russian prisoners were assigned to work at the factory to serve their sentences. 150 of these soldiers were taken to the railroad repair factory in Stakhanov. But the prisoners were met at the factory by soldiers of the Wagner Group. 30 Wagner soldiers asked the prisoners to join the war, but the prisoners refused. Prisoners who refused to join the Wagner Group were ill-treated. These prisoners were removed from the area and taken elsewhere. However, no one knew where the prisoners were taken. The Russian prisoners were very frightened by this and said that they agreed to join the army. Most of these prisoners were sent to the Luhansk region after completing their military training. But that's when the truth came out. One of the Russian prisoners made a phone call to his family before joining the army. In the call he said, "There are 150 of us here, locked in a railroad repair shop. We were stupidly sold, we didn't accept it." Another prisoner said, We have no other choice. Those who said no have already been taken away. I don't know what happened to them now. These Wagner people came. You see, they don't care. Now they are going to kill us and throw us in the field, and that's it." After these phone calls were published by independent news agencies, everyone in Russia was outraged, especially the Russian soldiers. When Russian soldiers learned that the Wagner Group was forcibly recruiting prisoners into the army, they changed their relations with the Wagner Group leaders. Russian soldiers now have a very harsh attitude towards the leaders of the Wagner Group. This is ruining the reputation of the Wagner Group. The growing tension between the Wagner Group and Russian soldiers worries the Kremlin. British intelligence prepared a report on this issue. According to the report, Russian soldiers may start a revolt against the Wagner Group. It has been known for a long time that Russian soldiers and Wagner executives had disagreements. But if a mutiny breaks out as a result of this incident, the Russian army could suffer a very heavy loss. Putin has asked for special measures to be taken against the risk of mutiny. Putin is very afraid of a mutiny in the Russian army. Putin is living a nightmare. What do you think about this tension in the Russian army? What do you think about the Wagner Group? Do you think the Wagner Group is really powerful? What do you think about the Wagner rulers recruiting prisoners into the army? Don't forget to share your opinion with us. Follow us for more updates. All rights to these videos belong to Anka Daily News YouTube channel. Our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook usernames are @AnkaDailyNews. Do not rely on any other social media publication.